Okay. Again, on behalf of the Eastern Transportation Coalition, we welcome you to this RITIS workshop, Exploring Probe Data Analytics Suite Tools and the Updated Volume Estimation Models that Drive Them. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We welcome questions throughout this workshop today. They'll be monitored throughout the presentation and they'll be answered at the appropriate times or at the end of this workshop. There are two ways you can ask questions. You can verbally ask your question and you can raise your hand. That brings you to the top of the list and then we know that you have a question. The other way is to use the Q&A box. At this point, I'd like to introduce Cheryl Bradley. She is the TSMO Program Director for the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Cheryl?
Thank you, Joanna. Welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you today. We're going to give you a quick overview of a couple things going on with the coalition, and then we'll jump into introducing our speakers. Coming up, we have our Travel Information Web Summit, which is a member-only event for those who are interested in how we disseminate information to the motoring public. We'll also have another Waze and third-party mapping group meeting in June. We have some upcoming RITIS. Aside from today's meeting, we have an enhancement working group on the 21st, and then we'll do another user group meeting on May 9th. We've been doing some work, cross-cutting work between our TSMO group and our freight planning group, which relates to bridge strikes and talking about those impacts that they have not only on the infrastructure, but on the roadway closures and congestion that results from those. For the Transportation Data Marketplace, we have a state POC and TAC meeting coming up on April 9th. And then in the fall, we'll be getting back into our HOGS meetings, our highway operation groups, which are focused on incident management. So lots of good things going on and looking forward to seeing some of you all there as our members. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have a lot of different participants today. We have over 475 people registered from all over the country, multiple state DOTs, as well as cities, counties, some MPOs. So lots of groups here interested in the information that's coming out of the CATT Lab and our RITIS group. So we are excited to share today. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers. We had intended to have Mark Franz with us today, but unfortunately he is not able to join us. So it will be Rick Ayers leading the helm. And Rick is our public sector advocate with the University of Maryland's CATT Lab. He has over 30 years of experience working with location-based enterprise software systems at the federal, state, and local levels. In his current role, he serves to support state and local transportation agencies in the successful implementation and deployment of the Regional Integrated Transportation Information System, or RITIS. Rick has also worked extensively with the Eastern Transportation Coalition member agencies, as well as federal and state transportation agencies to support and manage their respective enterprise implementation of the RITIS platform. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Rick.
Fantastic. Thanks for the introduction, Cheryl. And I think more importantly, thank you for the opportunity to present this workshop to the broader community that the Eastern Transportation Coalition supports. So as I get my slide deck going here, just do a quick visual and audio check. Joanna?
You're good, Rick. We can see full screen and we can hear you well.
Fabulous. Again, my name is Rick Ayers. Thank you, everyone. Everyone being 231 people on the call. Very excited. I'm glad you're not in front of me because it'd be overwhelming. But I'm happy that you're able to join for today's workshop, in which we were invited to provide some insights to some new methodologies that the CATT Lab had developed not too long ago in developing volume limiting estimations for volumes. Much of that work is now driving on the back end some of the algorithms, math, and business logic to tools within probe data analytics, in particular, the user delay cost tool and causes of congestion. So before I get started, I always like to share, as opposed to perhaps waiting until this slide deck comes out and is published by the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Get your phones out, take a screen grab. This is this QR code is a PDF of today's slide deck. So you have that, you can open that up and follow along if you'd like, and or have that available to download immediately after today's workshop. Oop, excuse me. We typically like to ask a few polling questions for myself. It gives me an opportunity to assess who's on the line, who's been using the tools that we're going to talk about. So before we get in momentarily, I'm going to ask one of the first polling questions, and hopefully we'll get everyone to contribute and provide some feedback to that. So be tuned in. We're going to ask some questions along the way. Today's agenda is broadly, again, to talk a bit about this updated volume limiting methodology that we've implemented on the back end and business logic to support some key tools, mobility analytics tools within probe data analytics. Give you a quick overview of this car following model that is being used for volume limiting procedures within the back end of probe data analytics. Share with you the validation work that we went through to validate this car following model and updated volume limiting procedures. And then I'm going to spend a good bit of time towards the last half of the workshop talking about use cases and going through some demos. So, hey, Rick, why is user delay cost tool and analysis important? How might we use that? Well, I'm going to walk through a couple of scenarios with you, and we're going to walk through the user delay cost tool, and we'll talk a bit about how to apply the metrics, the dollar cost, vehicle hours of delay, in terms of various different use cases that you as practitioners within the transportation community might want to apply those user delay cost measures. So here we are. Our first polling question is, you're going to see a prompt come up, and thank you, Esther. Which set of tools do you use in your agency to develop performance measures insights? Are you using probe data analytics, or do you use NPM RDS analytics, or do you use maybe a combination of the two? So give you a quick moment to answer that. Esther, you let me know when you feel comfortable with posting the results. We got a lot of folks on the line, 251 now. So which set of mobility analytics tools do you use within your agency or to support your agency? PDA, NPM RDS analytics, or maybe both?
Rick, there's a question while people are finishing up this in the chat box for you. Can you explain the difference between PDA and NPM RDS? I thought they were the same.
It is a good question. Well, some states and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail during the demos of this section. Some states license probe data from a third-party data provider, such as NRIX or HERE or TomTom. That probe data gets archived by the CATT Lab, minute-by-minute data. It's current, it's updated on a much more frequent basis. And probe data analytics and the tools within PDA allow you to ask questions and query that third-party probe data. On the other hand, NPM RDS analytics is a national data set that's hosted, if you will, by the Federal Highway Administration. It's 5-minute increment data. It's only on the NHS or the National Highway System. There's a couple of other kind of unique differentiators between that and minute-by-minute data, but it's different. So there's underlying data that's different. The underlying data is different between the two. And then the capabilities or the stack of tools that sit on top of that data are different. Much more comprehensive suite of tools within Probe Data Analytics as compared to NPM RDS Analytics.
Okay, I think we're ready to close that and show.
PDA mostly, some NPMR, oh, and then both. So I use both, and I'll explain why it's important to use both. One of the key differentiators with the NPM RDS analytics data set is that as compared to traditional third-party probe data, is that you could separate out freight truck performance measures from passenger vehicle performance measures. All right, with that, thank you everyone for sharing. So I got a good sense of what our user base is or your knowledge base is from a familiarity with some of these mobility analytics tools that are provided by the CATT Lab under the RITIS platform. So I'll give you a quick background on why a new methodology is being used. Some time ago, when we first rolled out the user delay cost tool within Probe Data Analytics, this is years and years ago, we had discovered that there's some abnormalities that were associated with interstates in particular that had congested roadway segments. So the numbers were out of whack as compared to what was expected. So while we traditionally looked at volume profiles, and I'll kind of step into that in a bit, volume profiles looking at volume at specific increments of time throughout the day for a particular, typically single segment or single point along a roadway, it just wasn't enough. So we had developed and we accommodated for this by implementing our own volume limiting algorithm at the time. Now that volume limiting algorithm, just kind of give you some context to where technology and where data has evolved, that volume limiting that we implemented years ago was largely based off of, if you think about AADT that comes out of each state, historically, you'd be looking at a single point or maybe one segment that didn't have bidirectionality, and there was a single AAT value for those volumes. Well, reality is, as data became more detailed data about our roadway segments became more ubiquitous from sources like OpenStreetMap, we're able to determine not only the length of roadways, provide some more fidelity or granularity to roadway segments along a corridor, but we also have insights to the number of lanes. And so those insights about the fidelity or granularity of roadway segments, the number of lanes in both directions on a roadway, we were able to leverage in some work that we did a couple of years ago under contract from US DOT's Bureau of Transportation Statistics, and building out the causes of congestion graphs web app. This QR code on the right is basically a link to that open website, web app that lets you kind of query and look at causes of congestion at the national, state, and local level, or local county level. Well, to build out some of that work or some of the back-end algorithms, it gave us a chance to kind of reassess what is our volume limiting algorithm that we traditionally implemented. Look, if we try to implement a new volume limiting methodology, which we'll see is based off of some thoughts and ideas about leveraging car following models. So just some background to why volume limiting is important. Again, if you look at this, if you think about traditional volume profiles for any roadway segment, it's breaking down the volumes at different increments throughout the day. Sometimes it's hourly increments, sometimes it's 15-minute increments, but those volume profiles, they are pretty good at estimating volume, but they don't actually capture the impact of volumes when the conditions on the roadways are abnormal, or you've got congestion, or maybe there's a work zone, or I mean, congestion is going to form from a work zone. And as such, you know, these example photos, you know, normal traffic flow, traditional volume profiling, and even traditional volume profiling is going to be fine. But when you get to abnormal conditions, like you have on the right, that's going to have an impact on how you assess volumes to support user delay cost estimates. So the profiling really helps address that. Now, when we began to work through this updated volume limiting methodology, there's some intense work done by some of the data scientists here at the CATT Lab and kind of figuring things out, right? Now we have OpenStreetMap, we have detailed insights about the length of segments, the number of lanes. Now we want to translate that and use some car following methodology to optimize as much as possible what can be captured from a volume perspective on a roadway segment. So there's some assumptions that were applied in building out this car following model that is used to assess volumes on the back end of the user delay cost analysis tool. And it makes sense, right? If we look at this pictograph, if you will, this infographic, that at high speeds, you got cars that are spaced out much further apart. Moderate speeds, you got them a little bit closer. And then when it's congested state, it's super tight. They're going slower. Vehicles are going slower. So volumes are impacted and vary as compared to kind of free flow speed on a segment of roadway. The other thing that we had to take into consideration is, you know, freight trucks have a different profile on a roadway segment in terms of their length as compared to a passenger vehicle. And in addition to that, the following distance is different. So both of those elements in terms of the types of vehicle, because as you know, within the user delay cost analysis tool, you can look at and separate passenger vehicle from freight truck vehicle for those user delay cost analysis. We incorporated some of that knowledge or thinking into the algorithm. So at a high level, the procedure was, hey, let's move through these different steps. Let's estimate the spacing of the passenger and commercial vehicles. Let's then calculate the total lane length consumed by each vehicle's length and spacing. Then we're going to compute the number of passenger and commercial vehicles on each segment, as well as compute both of those for vehicles traversing the segment. And then here's where, here's where the magic math happens on the back. It's very simplified, but we compare the car following model, the results of that, to our traditional kind of volume profiling model, and to accommodate for limits of volume, we choose the minimum or the lowest volume, because our old methodology was over limiting the actual volume. So it was not a fair or accurate assessment of volumes on roadways, and we'll see the results of that when we get into some of the validation here in a minute. So on the validation side, so how do we confirm this? So we've got this methodology, we got a lot of cool math that's going into this. To validate this stuff, we had to have fixed sensors on roadways, kind of collect data from known sensors that are calibrated and they're accurate. So back in 2019, we captured data on May 22nd, 2019, from 16 different automated traffic recorders throughout the state of Maryland. You can see in this table, we got 16 ATR stations. We're getting traffic in both directions. Again, these are calibrated, highly accurate. Maryland DOT kind of, they know that these are accurate stations. So we know we've got a good sample set of accurate, real numbers that are moving through these ATR sensors on the roadways. So we use that as kind of the baseline. And here's the interesting results. What we found is that largely for functional class 1 and 2 roadway segments, now in this bar chart, this leftmost bar represents ground truth, or those ATR stations, and the user delay cost that was calculated for that day on May 22nd. And then look at this. This is the new car following volume limiting calculation versus our historic volume limiting calculation. The two are very different. And it just illustrates that while implementing this car following methodology to limit volumes at an appropriate level is getting a much more accurate and representative indication of true volumes on the specific corridors. The other kind of observation, though, is while functional class 1 and 2 we saw some pretty significant variation between our traditional volume limiting methodology and the new car following methodology. For functional class 3 and 4, there wasn't a whole lot of variation. And this is important to differentiate, right? Because if you think about where we're really going to see congestion, where we're really going to see the impacts of work zones and collisions and weather events on your network, it's going to be on these functional 1 and 2 class roads. So we're really excited that we brought this new methodology to bear in the back end math to our user delay cost calculation. The animation on the right is kind of a fun way for me to just illustrate to you that while I've simplified the whole process and the procedure and kind of illustrated the outcomes here, our data scientists, there's like 10 pages of crazy math that goes into this. I don't know anything about the math. My buddy Mark Franz, he does. So if you're really into the math and you want to dive into this stuff and ask more questions, feel free to ping Mark afterwards. A lot of this is published, and I'll share with you some resources where you can kind of dig into a little bit of this yourself. PowerPoints, documentation, all through our help system. I don't have a question yet. No polling question yet. I'm going to pause for a minute.
You do have a question, though, not a polling question.
That's what I'm pausing for. Let's see if I can answer it. As long as it doesn't have anything to do with math.
I think it's a lot of math. Mina Lockwood from VDOT asks, can you show the hourly breakdown of the UDC comparison? Do the ground truth sites include highly congested locations or times?
So for the validation work, Mina, hi Mina. So for the validation work that we conducted, if that's what you're asking for, I'm sure that Mark has some results of that in more detail that he can share with you. So just ping me an email, Mina, and we'd be happy to share that with you if I understood your question correctly. All right, so now that I've given you some background to this updated methodology of leveraging car following methodology versus our traditional volume profiling methodology, again, that volume limiting methodology is driving a couple of key tools within probe data analytics and NPM RDS analytics, excuse me. The primary tool that hopefully much of you have explored and utilized in some of the work that you do, is the user delay cost tool. The UDC tool, for short, is available in both of those kind of mobility data analytics suite of tools, PDA and NPM RDS analytics. Now that the user delay cost tool, it's pretty basic in terms of what it reports back to you, the analysis and the metrics that it gives back. It's all about reporting dollar cost impact of congestion, right? You go out and you tell PDA or NPM RDS analytics what roads you want to analyze, and it comes back and says, oh, these are cost impacts. Well, why do you need that? So I love the fact that we have this tool for our user community, because here's the deal. When you're talking to the public, you're talking to leadership, particularly if you're talking to an elected official, there's nothing more compelling to those individuals than to give them a dollar cost impact that congestion is having on their roadways in their backyard or their district. And to help them align, they see red, yellow, green on a map for traffic, and they know that traffic's bad, and they know they need to do something about it. But when you could tell them in terms of dollars, what's going on and how much it's costing the traveling public on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis or annual basis, it's like, wow, that is incredible, super compelling, and it helps drive and justify projects or budget needs for your programs. So some use cases that we typically see our user community applying UDC dollar cost analysis for work zone performance reporting. I put that in bold because that's going to be the use case kind of demo work that I'm going to walk through later in this afternoon's workshop, or this morning for those of you on the West Coast. Often see in quarter performance reporting, we want to incorporate dollar cost. Well, how is this corridor performing, and what's the dollar cost impact of congestion on, well, I'm in Virginia today, Mina from VDOT, I'll just say as an example, on Ox Road, Virginia 123, what's the dollar cost impact on a weekly basis? Corridor performance reporting. Regular traffic congestion reporting, and a lot of times we see user delay costs being applied and used to support before and after action assessments, quantifying, hey, we've implemented this new project on Fairfax County Parkway, not too far from where I live. There's this massive a series of intersections that are being redesigned and redeveloped, taking out signalized intersections and putting in a series of roundabouts. Really cool idea. I'm a big fan of roundabouts, but how cool will it be at some point where you could come in and do a UDC cost analysis before the project and see how jacked up it is and how much it costs the traveling public. And then afterwards, ideally, you run that UDC cost analysis and things are beautiful and there's rainbows because the UDC cost is less. So before and after project assessments, showing the value from a dollar perspective, hopefully with improvements. Collision assessments, okay, you've had a collision or an incident on a roadway, an after action report showing what that incident cost, not only perhaps on the primary corridor that the incident took place, but sometimes you want to assess, detoured, folks that detoured and got off the primary road and impacted local roads, kind of help assess from an operations perspective, hey, did we get our DMS signage correct? We see that there is some heavy impacted congestion on these arterials. It cost us this much from a vehicle hours delay on that particular day. What can we do better? And then a big one for nearly every state across this great country of ours is severe weather impacts. measuring, quantifying in dollars the impact that weather has had for a single event, or maybe that event has had an effect from a flooding perspective or whatever for several days. Great way, again, to tell your story from a dollar cost perspective to elected officials and the general public. So those are some use cases. A lot of those, as if you're a RITIS user, you know that we've built out a host or a large suite of report templates that we make available for free for you to download. And you can use those report templates to kind of pepper in various different performance measures out of PDA and NPM RDS analytics and ingest those into the reports. And that's kind of what we're going to drive at and work through today. So as a segue, though, I am now going to ask you to participate in another polling question. Have you ever used the PDA user delay cost analysis tool? And actually, for that matter, I should have added in here if you've used the NPM RDS analytics user delay cost tool, because again, user delay cost tool exists in both of those applications, if you will. So yes or no. So it kind of helps me assess how much detail I get into setting up a query in PDA within the user delay cost tool. Yes or no? Give you a few moments. 257 folks on the line. Is this a record, Joanna?
I think it
Record.
may be. If not, it's very close.
God, I love it.
But we do have, you actually have a bunch of questions.
Oh no.
I know.
All right. So let's close the poll. That should have been an easy one. Let's see what the results were. Oh wow. 70% haven't used it. So this is kind of cool, right? I mean, you saw in the previous slide that we've got a whole bunch of different use cases in which you'd want to leverage this tool, the user delay cost analysis tool. So 70% of you, this is going to be new info, and you're gonna walk away this afternoon with total excitement. You're not going to be able to wait until you get back to your desk and start running analysis. So let's move to those questions, Joanna, and I'll do my best to answer or punt.
Right, and if anybody who's been on and maybe there are some new folks, but if anybody's been on these webinars, we take all the questions, and not only will Rick have an opportunity to review the responses, but Mark Franz will. So we'll probably get to some of those answers. Some of the shorter ones that can be done in the Q&A, we'll get Mark to answer those. But to start, Tom Murtha asks on slide 16, the bar chart shows the change in user delay cost, not volumes. Are the changes in actual volume estimate proportional?
The bar chart and
Slide 16.
When we did our validation work, that was a UDC calculation. So is that it was the dollar cost analysis using the different volumes from each of those different sources. So volumes from directly from the ATR stations, volumes from the volume profiling method using the car following method, and then volumes that are estimated from our historic volume profiling method. So you've got a true count for the ATR stations. You've got an estimate from the car following volume profiling methodology, and then another estimate using our old school volume profiling method. And as you saw in slide 16, the ATR station UDC cost was very similar, very close to the car following volume limiting estimations. Okay, thank you. Next.
Does anyone with the RITIS account have access to this new tool?
Everyone, if you have a probe data, if you have a RITIS login or RITIS credentials, you either have access to NPM RDS analytics or probe data analytics, as well as or possibly a broader suite of RITIS real-time situational awareness capabilities. So yes, if you log in as a NPM RDS analytics user, you're going to see a suite of tools that are available to you. One of them is the user delay cost tool. If you log in as a PDA user, you're going to see the UDC tool within the suite of tools within PDA. It has a $sign on it. It looks like this in the list of tools. That's the UDC. And we'll take a look at that in the landing page.
Okay, great. Another question, your new methodology seems to sometimes reduce the volumes assumed to traverse a link. So with the reduced volumes, I would expect the user delay cost to go down, but your bar charts show the costs increase. Can you please explain?
Yeah, so what happens, what we were seeing with the old school methodology as compared to the car following methodology is that the old school methodology was over limiting the volumes. So it was because it didn't have the detail that I was talking about in terms of, you know, the granularity of the road segment length as well as the number of lanes. So there's a lot more accuracy that's represented in the algorithm to determine volumes, so that when we do perform that volume limiting, we're not over limiting the volumes like we used to. So as I'd indicated, the functional class 1 and 2, you're going to see those numbers bump up quite a bit. Functional class 3 and 4, it's not going to be that big of a difference because, again, there's not as much volume and congestion, and that methodology or the volume limiting car following model methodology doesn't kick in. I mean, quite honestly, the car following methodology, volume limiting estimation of volumes, only kicks in super abnormal or severe congestion scenarios. Most of the time, we don't meet, on the back end math side of things, I don't have the details to share with you, but most of the time you're not hitting the threshold, and so you're not using that. Once you hit that threshold, then the math is going to more accurately represent volumes for the roadway segment or segments that you're analyzing, if that makes sense. Got another question? Do one more, Joanna?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You have a lot more questions, and I want to make sure that we get to
Content.
content. Exactly. Because like I said, they'll be answered in the Q&A. If we have time at the end, we'll definitely do that.
I got time. We have time for one more.
If we have access to the NPM RDS analytics and use the UDC tool, is the probe data analytics methodology applied, or are we getting the old volume profiling methodology? So
you're getting both, actually. So it's kind of cool. We've the old volume profiling methodology. Remember, as I just stated, that's kind of baseline, and under severe congestion conditions, as I mentioned, it was over limiting volumes. But now that we've implemented the car following model methodology, when you do reach that threshold or go into those super abnormal congestion conditions on a roadway or on a series of roadway segments and a corridor, we're going to more accurately represent volumes or more accurately estimate volumes on the road. So the back end math is still has some of the original logic, but it's not, we're no longer over limiting the estimated volumes, because we're saying, hey, if in doing the math, we hit this threshold, we're going to kick in the car following model methodology, and we're going to use that to limit the volumes. So it's not all out of whack like it used to be. So again, you're getting both, and it's only when you hit a certain threshold with severe congestion that the car following model gets kicked in and implemented on the back end math.
Okay.
Good question. All right.
We're going to keep moving forward, and we'll try to get to those questions a little bit later.
All right. This is a good one, and it's a super important segue to the demo and this whole discussion of, all right, well, we're talking about some back end methodologies for estimating volumes, and so volume is key to the calculation to user delay cost analysis. That being said, there's a whole host of different sources. Well, there's not a whole host. There's I don't know, maybe a couple of different sources for volume. There's probably three different sources for volumes that we, the CATT Lab, use to drive the back end estimations and calculations for user delay costs. You're either an agency or a state that has submitted your volumes, your AADTs, to the CATT Lab so that we can use that in the UDC tool, the user delay analysis, user delay calculation, or user delay cost tool, or you're using maybe a third-party volume source. So there's companies, there's third-party probe data providers out there, and others that are now offering probe data. I know there's a state up in New England a couple of states up in New England that are looking at or looking to procure third-party volume data sets. And then there's federally hosted volume estimates that come out of that NPMR DS analytics data source. But the question at hand, the polling question at hand is, has your agency or the agency you represent or the NPO that you serve within the state or the consultant, do you know if your state has submitted its volume data to the CATT Lab? I'm asking this question because I'm curious how many of you actually know if the state has submitted volumes or not, because I have the answer for you shortly, but I'm kind of curious as to what the results are, and what are they?
All right, I think we can close that poll.
Yeah, people don't know. I'm not surprised.
13%.
Well, at least
Yeah.
8. Yeah, at least 18 of you are familiar with the fact that you know that your state has submitted volume data to the CATT Lab. So this is super important. I can't emphasize, I can't stress enough the importance of your state to submit your volume data associated with TMC segments to the CATT Lab. Don't just, you could send us a table, but that table has to have TMC IDs and has to be segmented. I'll show you some information about submitting your volume data to us and the kind of the methodology or kind of the specs for that. But this is a map of the states that have submitted their volume data to the CATT Lab. The 3D states that are highlighted and pop out of the map, those are the only states in this nation that have submitted volume data to the CATT Lab. There's a lot more states that are using RITIS and NPM, a lot more states that are using probe data analytics than these states. So you hear this from Michael at the end of every RITIS user group meeting. He's just like bangs you on this point. Submit your volumes, submit your volumes. Why is it important? You'll see in a minute. I've tried to emphasize it. The knowledge or awareness of volumes, and the more accurate they are coming from the source, they're going to be more accurate. That helps drive more accurate user delay cost analysis. And we can't get a more accurate representation of dollar cost impact and congestion in your state unless we have your volumes. So we implore you, again, submit your volumes. I'm going to talk about how to do that. Again, you can submit them if you have them. Much of these states have figured it out, and they've submitted their volumes, and they do it regularly. They do it on an annual basis. Go to a third party. There's some reasonable approaches. If you'd like to talk about that in more detail, fire off an email to me afterwards, and be happy to kind of have that conversation. We're not a data provider. RITIS CATT Lab is not a data provider. We're a mobility analytics platform provider, but we certainly work with a host of third parties that are familiar with and provide volume data. Again, reinforce, you'll hear this from Michael, me again and again, submit your volume data. All right, let's get into a demonstration. I'm going to walk through a couple of things in the last 30 minutes we have together. I'm hoping to kind of drive and impart the value of the user delay cost analysis tool, why it's important. Again, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of some of the use cases, I'm going to focus on work zone performance reporting. And so I've set up a couple of scenarios in the state of Virginia because I'm in Virginia today and just more familiar with some of the data sets within Virginia. But you could do this yourself in your own state, hopefully leverage some of the tools and capabilities that I demonstrate throughout the day. One of the first things that I want to share with you as I get into these demos is that I love telling a story with demonstrations. It's one thing to demo a tool and show you how to build out a query within PDA and kind of review the results of whatever tool that you use to perform your analysis. But it's something different when you can put some context to it and tell a story. And today the context and the story that we're going to build out is work zone performance reporting. Now, some of you who have used RITIS in the past, Pro Data Analytics, are familiar with the fact, as I mentioned earlier today, that we do have a comprehensive suite of report templates that we provide through our RITIS user community. You log in, you have access to all these reports. There's a number of different types of reports. There's quarter performance reporting, monthly congestion, top 10 bottleneck reports, after action reports. Today, I wanted to focus again on work zone performance reporting. When you click that link from this URL that you see at the top of the page, that takes you to this work zone performance reporting template page. And you have a number of templates that you can download. We're going to focus on this first one that was put together by Florida DOT. Down below, there's some additional resources that are related to the work zone performance reports that we make available. So I downloaded this template. It's a PDF document. That's what's really cool about these report templates. If you're new to RITIS and the Pro Data Analytics community, these report templates are super easy to configure. You download a PowerPoint template. You download this PowerPoint, and everyone has PowerPoint, right? You don't have to know how to code anything or write any scripts or get crazy complicated about it. it's a PowerPoint template. You download the PowerPoint template, and then you can go through and just edit the PowerPoint template to get what you need. So on page 6 of the work zone templates is this work zone performance report. This is a weekly report. It has a number of details about the work zone that we're not going to talk about today. We're really going to focus on just that element of the weekly work zone performance report. Look at that. It has average daily vehicle hours of delay and an average daily delay cost. Well, I could spend lots of time. I have spent lots of time with some of you in other workshops going through and helping you determine which Pro Data Analytics tools you use or NPM RDS analytics tools you use to kind of fill out and build out or configure this report template with metrics from PDA tools. But today, again, we're just going to focus on user delay cost, dollars, and vehicle hours delay as they are derived from the UDC tool. So with that, I'm going to open up my browser. Quick check. You see my browser?
Yes, we do.
Fabulous, thank you. All right, the first thing I wanted to do before we got into this this demo and exercise is I wanted to kind of point out to you, I'm going to go to the Pro Data Analytics landing page. I'm going to focus on this because it's essentially very similar. It's more comprehensive than NPM RDS analytics, but from an application tool suite perspective, when you come into Pro Data Analytics, I have more tools than probably most of you because I work for the CATT Lab. I got a lot of stuff I can play around with. But the user delay cost tool is typically about midway down within the suite of tools within the PDA landing page. Now, I want to take you to the help system first. You know, a lot of what I shared with you in terms of methodology and some of the math and descriptive information about how we develop use the delay cost tool can be found. If you look in the upper right hand corner, there's a link or a hyperlink to our help documentation. You open up the help documentation. If you've never explored the help documentation, that in the table of contents on the left side, towards the top, you've got general information about data sources, different performance measures. But as you scroll down, you'll see that there's this cascading folder organization to each of the different tools within Pro Data Analytics. If you continue down the tool list, you'll see that there's a link to user delay cost analysis. You click that, it's going to take you to this page. And if you want to get into some of the details to the user delay cost tool and some of the procedures for building a query and or looking at the results page, and then perhaps more importantly, for some of you who want to get into the nuts and bolts of things, scroll down and you'll find that there's methodology. And we provide some methodology to you and give you some of the information to the car following model and some reference info, all this magic math that goes on. And then in here somewhere is also a link to, well, maybe I'm thinking about another page. One of the things that you'll see in the methodology is that, oh, here's what I was thinking about. The summary of this analysis sample calculation can be found here. I think that's, yeah, that's a link to another, it's a link to another PowerPoint deck that was developed by our data scientists. So there's some good info. bottom line is there's some really good detailed information in our help system that you can explore and get some more details to the back end, how user delay cost analysis tool works, and the methodology. One of the things that I'd mentioned earlier was the importance of volume data. Remember, there's only a few states that have submitted their volumes to us. Well, hey, Rick, how does our agency get volume data to the CATT Lab? We're happy to take it. And within the help system, again, if you go into data types, this cascading folder organization, go to data types and move down and look for providing your volume data. You click that link and we give you some specs. This is how you provide your volume data. Organize it in this way, send it to intake@ritis.org. But quite honestly, if you really want to get engaged in a detailed conversation about submitting your volumes, send me an email or actually Michael Pack an email, and we'll get you moving in the right direction. But again, can't say enough how important it is for you to submit your volume data. And I'm going to show you why next. I'm logged into RITIS. If you're a full RITIS customer, you have access to real-time situational awareness capabilities and kind of a common operational picture module. It's called Traffic Map. I'm looking at Traffic Map right now. I'm zoomed into the city of Richmond, Virginia. And notice that I have kind of satellite aerial imagery is my base map. I have overlaid on top of that real-time speed information coming from Virginia DOT's probe data provider. And I also have overlaid on top of that incident data. And that incident data can be collisions, obstructions, disabled cars, or it could be work zones. So there's a work zone that's located on this primary interstate that traverses through Maryland. And I want to illustrate using the user delay cost analysis tool why it's important to submit your volumes like Virginia has, as opposed to relying on, let's say, for instance, a federal data source. Okay? A federal data source is NPM RDS Analytics. So let's go through that exercise really quickly. I've opened up the user delay cost tool from within Probe Data Analytics. You can easily open the same tool with NPM RDS Analytics. Your options are going to be different because you either have Probe Data or you have NPM RDS data or you have both. To set up a query within the user delay cost tool, if you're a RITIS or PDA user, you're pretty familiar with setting up a query within any of our tools. There's two parameters that drive any query within Probe Data Analytics. You have to tell the tool what the spatial parameter of your query is, but then you also have to tell the tool what the temporal parameter is, where and when. And so we kind of step you through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, blah, 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 however many steps there are, kind of drive you through, hey, user, what are the roads that you want to analyze for this user delay cost analysis? You got a bunch of different options. I'm not going to get into the weeds. You can indicate the road name. You can define the roads that you want to analyze through standardized geographies like zip code boundaries and county boundaries. If you have what are called segment codes, all probe data is mapped to either a TMC roadway segment or to a third party TMC road segment or high fidelity road segment data set, which could be XD and or topological subsegments in RICS and here respectively. You can also just use some tools to define interactively on the map what roads you want to use. So you can create this polygon and say, hey, I want all the roads within this polygon, and you click the finish button and it'll select all the roads within that polygon. And like, oh, I've over selected, so I want to remove polygons. So you got some tools. You can say, oh, I want to remove that polygon or those roads. I want to remove these roads. Anyway, you've got some really wonderful interactive mapping tools to identify which roads you want to include in your query. Now, I've already done that work, and this purple series of segments are the roadway segments that I want to analyze, because they're essentially sandwiching the location of that work zone that I showed you earlier. So this is the work zone. Looks like they've got a shoulder and another lane closed. And so I use this as a visual guide, and I say, you know what? I want upstream and downstream in both directions. I want to use those roads as part of my user delay cost analysis. So that's the spatial parameter of my query. Now then, I want to define the temporal parameter. I just went back in time because I know that this work zone began somewhere in 2022. And so I wanted to use, we're in March. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to just do an analysis for the month of March in 2023. Project began in 2022. It's still ongoing, but so I know I have some good data in March as compared to today. Now, here's the kicker right here. Step 3. This button allows you to change the provider. What's the provider? The provider of the volume data. I think this is overlooked by a lot of users, even the 18 that said that they've used the user delay cost tool before. I'm willing to bet that probably half of you have overlooked this button in the past. This is what drives the source of volumes, the source of truth for volume estimations for the user delay cost analysis. You can see in my list, I have everybody. Anybody who's submitted volumes to the CATT Lab, I have their data. Now, I wanted, because I'm doing work in Virginia, this analysis I'm doing in Virginia, I wanted to try to get as close to possible apples to apples. And so I ran this tool using NPM RDS data, volume data from 2022, which is actually about a year old. But then I ran the analysis again using Virginia DOT's volume data that they submitted to us for 2021. So again, trying to align as closely as possible the year of volume estimations, one coming from VDOT and another coming from that federal source again, NPM RDS Analytics. Also, by the way, if your agency has not submitted volume data, NPM RDS Analytics is a fine source, but you can also use, I think this CatWorks. This list on the right is a cascading volume, a source of cascading volume estimates. So the way you might want to think about it, just because we're talking about Virginia, is that, well, if you know that, I know that Virginia's volume data is going to be more comprehensive in terms of roadway corridors covered than the federal data set. So I'm going to put that at the top of the cascading list. Then I'm going to put NPM RDS. And then if there's any roads outside of all of the roads that were captured up above in this waterfall, then maybe they get captured by CatWorks. So there is a way to cascade which volume source you use. I ran 2 separate analyses. I ran one for Virginia Virginia's 2021 volume data, and one for NPM RDS 2022, which is actually 2021 volume. Anyway, those are the two sources, and you'll see that I've got two different tabs up here at the top that provide that the results. As you move through the UDC analysis, if you're a PDA subscriber, you have a couple of different options, whether your probe data provider is INRIX or here, you choose the data source. You can also include NPM RDS. I didn't want to do that in the context of running the analysis. I wanted two separate tabs, but you can include these data sources if you want. The next step is establishing what the cost of delay is for passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles. These numbers are updated annually from our friends at the Texas Transportation Institute. Typically, each state DOT has their own value that they like to apply for the cost of delay per hour for passenger vehicles and freight trucks. So I encourage you, if you begin to use this ubiquitously across your state, across your agency, work collectively to determine what these values are, because these are configurable values, right? Like I could put in whatever I want here, but if you're doing that, and then somebody else in the organization is using another number for commercial vehicles, like 80, it's going to muck up the consistency in reports and analysis that's being done. By default, you do have some configuration options for the percent of passenger and commercial distribution on your network. By default, it's 90 and 10. If you have another estimation of what that distribution is of passenger vehicles versus freight truck vehicles within your state, then you can modify that or configure that here, okay? Then you have all sorts of options for defining where delay should be calculated. For my analysis, I said, you know what? I want it for all segments. If there's any delay, I'll calculate it and give me the UDC numbers. You can get really fancy with this. You can say, hey, where speed falls below historical average, minus whatever, or when it falls below free flow speed, 20 miles per hour. Lots of flexibility there. And then you also have the option to calculate user delay cost against the expected speed. What expected speed? The historical average, the free flow speed. Some states have submitted their posted speed limits to us. So a couple of different options there. I'm running out of time. Oh, God. And I thought I wasn't going to have enough material. So I ran this analysis, user delay cost analysis, for these segments of roadway in Richmond using two different data sources. Virginia's VDOT's volumes for March of 2023, but I ran the analysis for month of March in March of 2023. This is the volumes are coming from another source, but take a look at this. This is the month of March in 2023. User delay cost analysis broken down by every day in the month, hour by hour. It's kind of cool. You can see trends, and something wacky was going on this Friday, the 17th. Everybody was going out for St. Patty's Day. You get daily summaries for the UDC, and then a grand total. Keep in mind that number, almost $2 million. Now, by default, the matrix is going to give you delay cost in dollars, but up here you could change that from cost of dollars to vehicle hours delay. Now you have vehicle hours delay. You can look at other metrics. You can also break this up by passenger vehicle and commercial vehicle. All right. Let's go back to delay cost. Note, using Virginia's volume for all vehicles, that number was 1.9, almost $2 million. Now then, I ran the same analysis, same road segments with the federal data source from the volume estimates from a federal data source. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. Ooh, only $1.7 million. For just 1 month, we're missing $300,000 worth of user delay costs. You multiply that out over a given year. If you're not submitting your volume data to the CATT Lab, this is a scenario that could affect you. You're missing costs of congestion. This is a great illustration of that variation. Volume estimates coming from an authoritative source like VDOT versus volume estimates coming from a federal data source that may not be as comprehensive. Okay, I'm going to get to point number 2 in the last few minutes that I have. Another example of where you're going to see the value of user delay cost tool, particularly if you're a PDA user, if you have third-party data. This is a map. If you're an NPM RDS analytics user, this is a map of where probe data is being collected. You log into PDA. This is going to show you where probe data is being collected, and that's an illustration of the road network that is available for you to do analysis. NPM RDS is just on the national highway system. The problem is it's not, there's road construction and there's events and collisions that happen off the NHS. And now you have no way to calculate user delay costs tools. So we invite you, subscribe to a third-party data provider, get on board with PDA. But this is just an example of just in Virginia alone, the orange represents expanded TMC network from Virginia's probe data provider versus in blue, just the NHS. So there's a lot of roads that you've got construction projects going on, you've got collisions that are happening, you have all sorts of weather events. If you're just using NHS, again, you're limited to the blue, and there's just, you're not going to be able to run the analysis. So keep that in mind. If you're only an NPM RDS analytics user, you're limited to the national highway system, the blue, to perform your analysis. If you have probe data, wow, cool. You got a heck of a lot more in orange. And in fact, I didn't put it on this map, but Virginia's got even more data or more roadway segments because they're subscribing to a super high fidelity road segment database. So it's important to know if you're wanting to run analysis, why isn't it working? This is the example I had. I wanted to perform some analysis on a road segment or on a series of roads just outside of south of Richmond. There's this work zone, again, another bridge construction work on Virginia 46. Well, Virginia 46 is not in the NPM RDS data set. So when I ran my UDC analysis, I was able to leverage the data that is provided by the probe data provider for the state of Virginia and get at least a weekly assessment of user delay cost analysis. I took this number and then I was able to plug that into my work zone weekly work zone performance report, and I was able to really quickly and easily update this report such that I had, I just took the weekly total, divided it by 7, and I got these numbers: 7.6 hours of delay and $325 of delay cost. That is, oh shoot. Did I go off my browser? Are you guys still seeing my browser?
We're seeing the weekly work zone performance report, VDOT.
Okay. All right, that's fine. And I'm going to wrap up really quickly. We'll get to some questions. I know I'm running long. Thank you for your patience. But some key takeaways for you folks. Again, okay, can't say enough how important it is to submit your agency volumes to the CATT Lab if you're a probe data, if you're a PDA user or RITIS user. It obviously makes a big difference in user delay cost analysis reporting, what those measures, what those numbers come out to be, or those dollar cost assessments, very, very different. Our new methodology for kind of volume limiting and the car following model really reflecting a more accurate assessment of delay costs on our functional class 1 and 2 roads. And kind of as part of that car following model is a more accurate estimate of the number of passenger and commercial vehicles. All of this is driving improvements to estimating in estimating user delay cost in PDA tools. I have focused on today's workshop on the user delay cost analysis tool, but some of that back end methodology and volume estimations also feeds the causes of congestion tool, which is available to a select number of states as well. If you want to learn more about user delay costs, I provided a link here. And oh, quick question, sorry. Wanted to ask before people fade away completely. We still have a couple hundred, 190 people on the call. This is kind of driving perhaps the next workshop. Sort of interested in, are you interested in better understanding how tools like user delay cost analysis and other tools within probe data analytics can help you help support you in developing your congestion management process reports? Yes or no. You know, maybe you're not involved in developing congestion management process reports, but if you aren't, maybe somebody in your organization is. Anyway, curious if you're if this might be of interest to you. Quick moment, close it, see what the results are.
Okay, we're just going to give everyone just another few seconds. Let us know. Right, we're over 100 responses, so we're gonna close that and share the results.
Oh, cool. That's good. So now I got content for the next workshop. That one will be fun because I'll bring in some other tools and capabilities other than probe data analytics. It'll be fun. All right, I assume we have a boatload of questions. You guys are on. I love it. There's 177 of you are still on. Let's take a couple more questions, Joanna, and then we'll wrap it up. Again, as Joanna indicated, we will do our due diligence. If you've asked a question and we don't get to it, our team will review those questions, answer them, and we'll report that back on the Eastern Transportation Coalition's website. But with that, let's take a couple more questions and then.
Right, so anybody who's registered or participated today will get a copy, we'll get a follow-up mailer with a link to that document that Rick just mentioned. Okay. Let's see. Does RITIS do the calibration process to ensure the agency submitted volume data that are accurate enough?
Nope, we just take whatever's shared with us.
I think some people have questions about different data. Can can PDA back calculate an estimate for AADT?
Back calculate an estimate for AADT. Well, I mean, similar to my demo, the user delay cost analysis tool is only going to use whatever volume estimate you choose in the volume data provider option of the tool. So it's not changing it. It's not modifying those volume estimates that are provided or that you select. It's just using that as the source for volume estimates for your analysis.
Another question, Simona from excuse me, VDOT. These estimated limited volumes are most useful for congested conditions, as I understand. Do you have a procedure for hourly volume profiles?
Well, the output of the user delay cost analysis tool will provide you hourly. I mean, you could get, remember in the UDC tool, it's completely configurable as to where you want delay to be calculated. In my analysis, I wanted it for all segments. Now you can choose if you, and that's a good way to kind of get those UDC costs from a time-based profile perspective, because that's the output of the UDC analysis tool. Is it's hour by hour for a 24-hour period for every day that you put in as your temporal parameter for your query. But if you wanted to really, focus on, okay, super congested conditions, then you can configure that in the UDC tool. You say, oh, where speed falls below free flow speeds, minus 20 miles per hour, or where speed falls below historical average by 20 miles per hour. You get, there's a lot of options in here, and you can get crazy wacky with it, but kind of a comprehensive assessment of user delay costs or vehicle hours delay. It's just going to be including all the segments and for historical average, because historical average is taking in consideration that segment or those segments for this time of the day relative to historic conditions. Okay.
So there are a lot of different questions about data that I think when you were showing data, people have questions about the data that was shown for their particular state. So I think there will definitely be an email for folks to, those questions will be answered, but any outstanding volume questions they can get in touch with you all directly about their.
Yes. Now it's probably confusing again. Just because I have this list of data providers, that doesn't mean you have this list. I work for the CATT Lab. You're probably going to have you're probably going to have at a minimum 2 data providers. You'll probably have CATWorks in your list. That's going to be at the top of available data providers. And you're probably going to have, any and all of the NPMR DS data sources. Now, if you're a RITIS Probe Data Analytics subscriber, you're also going to have, and you've submitted your volumes, you're also going to have your authoritative state agencies volume data, to choose from. So I apologize. It can be confusing just because, I've got a lot more options as I can tap into any state than you likely will have access to. But yes, happy to follow up, answer questions. Again, if you take a screen grab of this, if you want to get into the nuts and bolts and the math of of this car following model methodology, send this guy an email. Don't send me an email.
That said, we'll make sure anything that Mark needs to answer, we'll include this information in the Q&A, and
Yeah.
and for technical questions, check with Mark.
Yeah.
One more question, and then I think it's almost like 2:30, which is like 15 minutes over, but thanks for hanging on, everyone.
Yeah.
So assuming that there will be some way to calculate something like using data generated with this. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's good.
It would take a few extra steps on our end to calculate estimated yearly savings before timing changes and after, but it would be great to one day be able to generate something like that automatically. So that's kind of something to.
Yeah, for an annual before and after assessment, it's pretty straightforward, right? If you're doing your project is retiming a corridor, and you want to run user delay cost analysis on the corridor, again, spatial temporal parameters that go into it. You select the corridor that you're running your analysis on. You define the entire year before the retiming. You run your analysis, UDC, and then you run the analysis again on the same corridors after the retiming, and then you just do the math. Yeah, I mean, it's basic math, right? Before, after, subtract the two, and you've got the dollar cost savings. Hopefully you have a savings.
Right. If I want to submit volume data for my agency, should I reach out to my state point of contact first to coordinate?
Of course, your technical point of contact within your state agency is going to be the appropriate person to coordinate with. And I'm gonna share this with you. It is not an easy task to conflate a state's volume data that is typically aligned with a state's own authoritative road network, conflate that to a roadway segment database that is based off of TMC segment IDs or XD segment IDs or topological subsegment IDs. Conflation is a complicated and can be very expensive process. So please bear in mind that it's not snap of a finger. Oh, I know the state has AADTs for the roadway network. Yes, they do. But the state agency doesn't have AADTs that align with a TMC network or align with an XD network. So that's the work that has to happen. And again, there's only a few states that have done the heavy lifting, paid the piper to get that done, either internally or paid somebody externally to do that conflation work. But it's a good kind of summary point that I didn't make earlier. So I'm glad we addressed that question.
Do you want to do any other, or would you?
I think we should close.
I think so too. I think we're getting.
Yeah, we're 15 minutes past. So I am super grateful for everyone sticking around. There's still 120 of you. I love it. I'm looking forward to us following up and getting some more answers. Hopefully this was helpful. I think really quickly, do you want to share that last polling question? I don't know if I had it. Oh yeah, there it is.
Russ Holt, Russ Holt has from RIDOT has his hand up. Russ, did you have something you wanted to add? Or is that just accidental? Oh, okay, there it is. All right. Thank you very much, Rick, for all the information.
You are welcome. Cheryl, ETC, and crew, Joanna, Esther, thank you for inviting the CATT Lab to present for today's workshop. And we look forward to the next. When is the next workshop again? Have we set that in stone?
We have not. The next big RITIS event will be the user group meeting, which is in May, and all the folks here should receive an invitation.
Fabulous. All right, cool. What's the let's see the feedback from that last polling question. Hopefully it's positive. Okay, good. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, PowerPoint will be shared with everybody later. If you grab the QR code, you got it. Questions are being answered. Follow up with any of us on the team, and we'll be happy to help out. Thank you again, and signing off.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.